The cold December air bit at my cheeks as I stood on the front porch, my breath forming small clouds that disappeared into the gray morning sky. It was the 23rd of December, and the world around me seemed determined to celebrate, even though my heart felt like it had forgotten how. The neighbor's house across the street glowed with warm golden lights, their inflatable snowman swaying gently in the breeze, and somewhere down the block, I could hear children laughing, their voices carrying that particular pitch of excitement that only comes in the days before Christmas. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around myself, feeling the soft wool against my arms, and closed my eyes for just a moment. The scent of pine drifted from somewhere nearby, probably from the Hendersons' freshly cut tree, and it mixed with the smell of wood smoke from chimneys up and down the street. These were the smells of Christmas, the smells I had loved my entire life, but this year they felt different. This year, they reminded me of absence. Mom had passed away in March, just as spring was beginning to show itself. 9 months had gone by, and I thought I had learned to navigate the grief, to carry it like a heavy stone in my pocket that I had grown accustomed to. But the holidays had a way of making that stone feel impossibly heavier. Every tradition, every song, every twinkling light seemed to whisper her name. I heard the screen door creak open behind me, and then felt a warm hand on my shoulder. I didn't need to turn around to know it was David, my husband of 7 years. His touch was familiar, grounding, the kind of presence that didn't need words to communicate understanding. "We have to get the tree today," he said softly, his voice gentle but carrying a note of encouragement. "The kids have been asking." I nodded, still looking out at the street. Emma was 6 now, and little Jack had just turned 4. They were too young to fully understand the weight of loss, but old enough to notice that Grandma wasn't there anymore, that the house felt quieter, that I cried sometimes when I thought they weren't looking. "I know," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just don't know if I can do this, David. All of it. The decorating, the cookies, the carols. It all feels so empty without her." David moved to stand beside me, and I could feel the warmth radiating from him even in the cold morning air. He smelled like coffee and the mint soap he always used, comforting and familiar. "She would want us to celebrate," he said. "You know she would. She loved Christmas more than anyone I ever knew." He was right, of course. Mom had been the embodiment of Christmas spirit. She would start playing carols in November, would bake dozens of cookies to give to neighbors and strangers alike, would insist on driving through every neighborhood to see the lights. Her joy had been infectious, overwhelming, impossible to resist. "That's what makes it so hard," I said, and I felt tears beginning to sting at the corners of my eyes. "How do I celebrate when the person who taught me how to celebrate is gone?" David pulled me close, and I let myself lean into him, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong against my cheek. We stood there for a long moment, the cold air swirling around us, the sounds of the neighborhood continuing their cheerful symphony. "One step at a time," he finally said. "We'll do it together. And we'll do it for them. For Emma and Jack. They deserve to have Christmas magic, even if it feels impossible right now." I pulled back and looked up at him, seeing the concern in his dark brown eyes, but also seeing something else. Hope, maybe. Or determination. He had loved my mother too, had called her Mom for years, and I knew he was grieving in his own way. But he was trying, for me, for our children, and I realized that I needed to try too. "Okay," I said, wiping at my eyes with the back of my hand. "Okay. Let's get the tree." The smile that spread across his face was small but genuine, and it warmed something inside me that had felt frozen for months. We bundled the kids into the car an hour later, Emma chattering excitedly about what kind of tree we should get while Jack clutched his favorite stuffed bear and gazed out the window with wide eyes. The car smelled like the cinnamon air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror, and the heater blasted warm air that made my fingers tingle as they thawed. The tree farm was about 20 minutes outside of town, down a winding country road that cut through fields now brown and dormant for winter. I remembered coming here with Mom when I was Emma's age, remembered the way she would walk up and down every row, examining each tree with the seriousness of someone choosing a diamond, until she found the one that spoke to her. As we pulled into the gravel parking lot, I could hear the crunch of stones under our tires, and see families scattered across the field of trees, some pulling wagons, others carrying saws, all bundled in coats and scarves and hats. There was a small wooden building near the entrance with smoke curling from its chimney, and I could smell hot chocolate and something baking, probably the cider donuts they always sold this time of year. Emma was out of the car before I even had my seatbelt off, her pink coat bright against the muted colors of winter. Jack followed more slowly, still clutching his bear, his little boots crunching in the light dusting of snow that covered the ground. David grabbed my hand as we walked toward the entrance, and I squeezed back, grateful for the anchor. The man at the entrance was older, maybe in his 70s, with a white beard that made him look like he could be Santa's brother. He wore a red flannel jacket and a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Welcome, welcome," he said, his voice booming and cheerful. "Looking for the perfect tree today?" "Yes, sir," David replied, and I heard the smile in his voice. "These two have very specific requirements." Emma giggled and grabbed the man's hand with the unself-conscious trust of childhood. "It has to be tall," she announced. "Taller than Daddy. And it has to smell really, really good. And it has to be perfect." The man laughed, a deep sound that seemed to come from his belly. "Well, young lady, I think we can find something that meets those standards. We've got about 200 trees out there, and I'd bet my hat that one of them has your name on it." He handed David a saw and pointed us toward the rows of trees stretching out across the field. The sky above was still gray, heavy with clouds that promised more snow, and the air had that particular stillness that comes before a storm. We walked slowly through the rows, Emma running ahead to examine each tree with the same seriousness my mother had once shown, while Jack stayed close to my side, his small hand tucked into mine. The trees smelled incredible, that sharp, clean scent of pine and fir that seemed to clear my head and fill my lungs with something pure. "This one, Mommy," Emma called out, standing in front of a tall Douglas fir. "This one is perfect." I walked over to where she stood, David and Jack following behind. The tree was beautiful, full and symmetrical, its branches heavy with needles that looked soft and green even in the gray light. "It is beautiful, sweetie," I said, running my hand along one of the branches. The needles were slightly sticky with sap, and they released their scent even stronger at my touch. But Emma was already shaking her head, moving on to the next tree. "Actually, maybe this one," she said, then paused. "Or maybe that one." David caught my eye and grinned, and despite everything, I felt a small laugh bubble up in my chest. This was going to take a while. We spent the next 30 minutes wandering through the rows, examining what felt like every tree on the lot. Jack eventually asked David to carry him, resting his head on his father's shoulder with the easy exhaustion of a 4-year-old who had been walking for too long. Emma remained tireless, her enthusiasm never waning, her standards never lowering. I found myself getting lost in the rhythm of it, the walking, the looking, the smell of pine all around us. The cold air made my nose run and my cheeks ache, but there was something cleansing about it, something that felt like it was washing away some of the heaviness I had been carrying. We were near the back of the lot, in a section where the trees grew a bit more wild, less perfectly shaped, when I saw it. It wasn't the tallest tree, and it wasn't the most symmetrical. One side was fuller than the other, and there was a gap near the bottom where branches should have been. But something about it called to me. I walked over to it slowly, almost in a trance, and placed my hand on its trunk. The bark was rough under my palm, real and solid, and the scent that rose from its branches was so strong it almost made me dizzy. "This one," I said softly, and I wasn't even sure why. "This is the one." David came up beside me, Jack still in his arms, and Emma ran over to inspect my choice. I held my breath, waiting for her to reject it, to point out its flaws, to insist we keep looking. But instead, she walked around it slowly, her small face serious and thoughtful. Then she reached out and touched one of the branches, just as I had, and nodded. "Yes," she said simply. "This is our tree. It's not perfect, but it's ours." Something in her words hit me square in the chest, and I had to blink rapidly to keep the tears from falling. Out of the mouths of babes, as Mom used to say. David must have seen something in my face because he shifted Jack to one arm and put the other around my shoulders. "This is a great tree," he said firmly. "Let's take it home." The process of cutting down the tree, dragging it back to the entrance, having it wrapped in netting and tied to the roof of our car, all of it passed in a blur of activity and cold air and the sound of Emma's excited chatter. The old man at the entrance winked at me as we paid, and pressed 2 candy canes into the children's hands. "You picked a good one," he said to me, and I wasn't entirely sure if he was talking about the tree or something else. By the time we got home, fat snowflakes had begun to fall, drifting down from the gray sky in that lazy, peaceful way that made the whole world feel hushed and magical. David and I wrestled the tree off the car and through the front door, leaving a trail of pine needles and snow in our wake, while Emma and Jack danced around us, their excitement reaching a fever pitch. The house smelled like the pot roast I had put in the slow cooker that morning, rich and savory, mixing now with the sharp scent of the tree. David set it up in the stand in front of the living room window, the same spot where we put it every year, and stepped back to assess his work. "It's leaning a little to the left," I said, tilting my head. He adjusted it, then looked at me. "Better? Now it's leaning to the right." Emma giggled, and even Jack smiled around the thumb he had stuck in his mouth. It took several more adjustments before we all agreed it was straight, and by then we were all laughing, the kind of genuine laughter that I hadn't heard in our house for months. It felt good. It felt like maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. The boxes of decorations were in the attic, and David volunteered to brave the cold and dust to bring them down. I heard him moving around up there, the creak of floorboards and the scrape of boxes being moved, and then his footsteps on the ladder as he descended. He brought down 4 large boxes, stacked them in the living room, and then went back up for more. Each box was labeled in my mother's handwriting, neat and precise. Ornaments. Lights. Garland. Stockings. Seeing her handwriting was like a punch to the gut, unexpected and sharp, and I had to sit down on the couch for a moment to catch my breath. Emma climbed up next to me, her small body warm against my side. "Are you sad, Mommy?" she asked, her voice small and concerned. I wrapped my arm around her and pulled her close, pressing my face into her hair. She smelled like the outdoors and the strawberry shampoo we had used that morning. "A little bit, sweetie," I admitted. "These boxes remind me of Grandma." She loved decorating for Christmas. Emma was quiet for a moment, and I could feel her thinking, the way children do when they're trying to make sense of something big. "I miss Grandma," she said finally. "But I think she would be happy that we're decorating. She always said Christmas was about being together." I felt tears slip down my cheeks, but this time I didn't try to hide them. "You're right, baby. You're absolutely right." David came down with the last box and set it down with a soft thump. He took one look at me and Emma on the couch and came over to sit on my other side, pulling Jack onto his lap. For a moment, we just sat there, the four of us, a small island of warmth and togetherness in the middle of the living room. Then Emma wiggled free and jumped up. "Okay," she announced. "Let's make it beautiful. For Grandma." And just like that, we were in motion. David untangled the strings of lights, a task that seemed to take forever and required more patience than I thought any human possessed. Emma and Jack pulled ornaments from the boxes, exclaiming over each one, holding them up to the light to watch them sparkle. I found myself drawn to the box labeled ornaments, and as I lifted the lid, I was hit with a wave of memories so strong I had to steady myself against the coffee table. These weren't just any ornaments. These were the ones from my childhood, the ones Mom had collected over decades, each one with a story, each one a small piece of our family history. There was the wooden soldier I had picked out when I was 5, his paint chipped now but his smile still bright. There was the glass angel Mom had bought the year she and Dad got married, delicate and beautiful, its wings catching the light. There was the felt reindeer Emma had made in preschool, lopsided and perfect. There was the silver bell that had belonged to my grandmother, Mom's mother, its sound clear and pure when I shook it gently. I lifted each one carefully, reverently, feeling the weight of them in my hands, the smoothness of glass, the roughness of wood, the softness of felt. Each one was a memory, a moment frozen in time, a reminder of all the Christmases that had come before. "Look at this one, Mommy," Jack said, holding up a round ornament with a faded picture inside. "Who is that?" I took it from him gently and looked at the picture. It was me, maybe 3 years old, sitting on Santa's lap at the mall, my face split in a huge grin. Mom was standing next to us, young and beautiful, her hand on my shoulder. "That's me," I said softly. "And that's Grandma. A long, long time ago." Jack's eyes went wide. "You were little like me?" "I was," I said, smiling despite the ache in my chest. "And Grandma took me to see Santa every year, just like I take you." "Can we put this one on the tree?" Jack asked. "So Grandma can be on the tree with us?" The simplicity of his request, the pure logic of a 4-year-old, broke something open inside me. "Yes, baby," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "We'll put it right in front, where everyone can see it." David finally got the lights untangled and working, and we spent the next hour wrapping them around the tree, the white lights glowing warm and soft in the dimming afternoon light. Outside, the snow continued to fall, and the world beyond our windows looked like a snow globe, peaceful and pristine. Emma took charge of ornament placement, directing Jack and David and me with the authority of a seasoned decorator. "That one goes higher. This one needs to be in the front. No, not there, over here." We followed her instructions with amused patience, and slowly, the tree began to transform. Each ornament we hung felt like a small act of remembrance, a way of bringing Mom into the room with us. I found myself telling stories as we decorated, stories about Christmases past, about Mom's traditions, about the way she would always insist on putting the angel on top herself, climbing up on a stepladder despite Dad's protests. David listened quietly, adding his own memories occasionally, and the children absorbed it all with the sponge-like attention of the young. I realized that this was important, this telling of stories, this keeping of memory alive. Mom wasn't here, but she could live on in these tales, and these traditions, and the way we chose to celebrate. By the time we finished, the tree was covered in ornaments, each one placed with care, each one a small piece of our history. The lights glowed softly, reflecting off the glass and metal and creating small rainbows that danced across the walls. It wasn't perfect. It was lopsided and crowded and probably broke every rule of professional decorating. But it was ours, and it was beautiful. David lifted Emma up so she could place the angel on top, the same angel that had crowned our tree for as long as I could remember. She held it carefully, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration, and then settled it onto the highest branch. "Perfect," David said, setting her down. "Absolutely perfect." We all stepped back to admire our work, and I felt David's hand find mine, his fingers lacing through mine and squeezing gently. The room was warm now, heated by the fireplace David had started and by the presence of all of us together. The smell of pine mixed with the smell of the pot roast and the faint scent of cinnamon from the candles I had lit earlier. "It's beautiful," Emma breathed, her face glowing in the light of the tree. "It really is," I agreed, and I meant it. That night, after dinner, after baths, after stories and tucking in and goodnight kisses, David and I sat together on the couch in the dark living room, the only light coming from the tree. The house was quiet, that particular quiet that comes when children are finally asleep, and outside the snow had stopped, leaving the world blanketed in white. I leaned against David, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing, and stared at the tree. The lights blurred slightly through my tears, creating halos of gold and white. "Thank you," I said softly. "For today. For pushing me to do this. I didn't think I could, but you were right. It helped." David kissed the top of my head, his lips warm against my hair. "She's still here, you know," he said. "In the ornaments, in the stories, in the way Emma insisted on perfection just like her grandmother did. She's still here." I nodded, not trusting my voice to speak. He was right. I could feel her presence in the room, not in a ghostly or frightening way, but in a comforting one, like a warm blanket wrapped around my shoulders. We sat there for a long time, not speaking, just being together in the quiet and the glow of the tree. And for the first time since March, I felt something that wasn't grief or sadness or loss. I felt peace. Small and fragile, but real. The next day was Christmas Eve, and I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. The sun was shining, bright and cold, making the snow outside sparkle like it was covered in diamonds. I could hear the children already awake, their voices carrying up the stairs, and I could smell coffee brewing, which meant David was already up. I got dressed quickly, pulling on jeans and a soft red sweater that Mom had given me 2 Christmases ago. It still smelled faintly of her perfume, that floral scent she had worn for as long as I could remember, and I breathed it in deeply, letting it ground me. Downstairs, I found David in the kitchen, flipping pancakes while Emma and Jack sat at the table, coloring pictures of Santa and reindeer. The radio was playing Christmas music, something instrumental and peaceful, and the whole scene was so normal, so beautifully ordinary, that I had to pause in the doorway just to take it in. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," David said, noticing me. "I made coffee." "You're a saint," I replied, moving to pour myself a cup. The warmth of the mug felt good in my hands, and the first sip was like liquid comfort. Emma looked up from her coloring. "Mommy, can we make cookies today? Like Grandma used to make?" I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, but this time it was accompanied by something else. Determination, maybe. Or courage. "Yes," I said firmly. "Yes, we can absolutely make cookies. We'll make all of Grandma's favorites." Emma's face lit up like the sun, and Jack clapped his hands together, leaving crayon marks on his palms. After breakfast, I pulled out Mom's recipe box, a wooden thing covered in stickers and worn smooth by years of use. Inside were dozens of recipe cards, all in her handwriting, some stained with butter or flour or chocolate, evidence of years of use and love. I flipped through them slowly, reading the titles. Sugar cookies, gingerbread men, chocolate crinkles, peanut butter blossoms, snickerdoodles. Each one was a memory, a taste of childhood, a piece of Christmas past. "We'll make the sugar cookies first," I announced. Those were always Grandma's specialty. David cleared the kitchen table while I gathered ingredients. Flour, sugar, butter, eggs, vanilla, baking powder. The children watched with eager eyes as I measured and mixed, following Mom's recipe exactly, the way she had taught me when I was Emma's age. The butter and sugar creamed together with a soft whirring sound from the mixer, and the smell was already making my mouth water. I added the eggs one at a time, then the vanilla, and the mixture turned pale yellow and fluffy. The flour went in last, and I let Emma help me stir it in by hand, her small hands gripping the wooden spoon with fierce concentration. "Now we have to chill it," I explained. "For at least an hour. Then we can roll it out and cut shapes." "An hour?" Emma groaned. "That's forever." I laughed. "I know, sweetie. But good things take time. That's what Grandma always said." While the dough chilled, we made gingerbread men, the spicy smell of ginger and cinnamon and molasses filling the kitchen and making it smell exactly like Christmas. Jack helped me crack eggs, getting more shell in the bowl than egg, but his pride in helping was worth the extra effort of fishing out the pieces. David set up a decorating station on the dining room table, covering it with newspaper and setting out bowls of colored frosting and sprinkles and candies. The children could barely contain their excitement, bouncing on their toes and asking every 5 minutes if the cookies were ready yet. When the first batch of gingerbread men came out of the oven, golden browned and perfect, the smell was so strong and so familiar that I had to grip the edge of the counter for a moment. I could see Mom standing in this exact spot, wearing her apron with the snowmen on it, pulling cookies from the oven with the same oven mitts I was using now. "You okay?" David asked quietly, coming up beside me. I nodded. "Yeah. Just remembering." He kissed my temple. "Good memories?" "The best," I said, and I meant it. The sugar cookie dough was ready by the time the gingerbread men had cooled enough to decorate, and I rolled it out on the floured counter while Emma and Jack argued over who got to use which cookie cutter. We had stars and trees and bells and angels and candy canes, all of them old and well used, some of them probably older than I was. I let the children press the cutters into the dough, their small hands needing help sometimes but their determination never wavering. We made dozens of cookies, covering every available baking sheet, and I slid them into the oven in batches, setting the timer and watching through the oven door as they puffed up and turned golden at the edges. The decorating was chaotic and messy and absolutely perfect. Emma approached it with artistic seriousness, carefully piping frosting and placing each sprinkle with precision. Jack took a more enthusiastic approach, dumping handfuls of sprinkles onto cookies already drowning in frosting, creating colorful disasters that made him giggle with delight. David and I decorated too, falling into an easy rhythm, and I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in months. There was something meditative about it, something soothing in the repetitive motion of spreading frosting and adding decorations. "Look, Mommy," Emma said, holding up a star cookie covered in yellow frosting and silver sprinkles. "This one is for Grandma, because she's a star in heaven now." My throat tightened, and I had to blink back tears. "It's beautiful, sweetie. She would love it." "We'll put it on a special plate," Emma decided. "Just for her." I glanced at David, and he nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "That's a wonderful idea," he said. By late afternoon, the kitchen was covered in flour and frosting and sprinkles, and we had made enough cookies to feed a small army. The children were sticky and tired and happy, their faces smeared with frosting and their bellies full of cookie dough they had snuck when they thought I wasn't looking. "Bath time," I announced, and they groaned but didn't protest too much, their energy finally starting to flag. While David handled baths and pajamas, I cleaned the kitchen, wiping down counters and washing bowls and putting cookies into containers. I set aside Emma's special star cookie on a small plate, placing it on the mantel next to a picture of Mom, one where she was laughing, her eyes crinkled with joy. I stood there for a moment, looking at her picture, at her smile, at the way she seemed to radiate happiness even in a still photograph. "I miss you," I whispered. "Every single day. But I'm trying, Mom. I'm trying to keep your traditions alive, to teach the kids the way you taught me. I hope I'm doing it right." The house was quiet except for the sound of water running upstairs and the children's laughter. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that reflected off the snow and made everything look magical. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to find David standing there, his hair damp from where Jack had apparently splashed him during bath time. "They want you to read them the Christmas story," he said. "The one from the book your mom always read." I knew the book he meant. It was old, the cover worn and the pages soft from years of being turned. Mom had read it to me every Christmas Eve when I was little, and I had continued the tradition with Emma and Jack. But I hadn't been sure I could do it this year, hadn't been sure I could get through it without breaking down. But looking at David, at the encouragement in his eyes, and thinking of the children upstairs waiting for me, I knew I had to try. The children were in Emma's room, both of them tucked into her bed, their faces scrubbed clean and their hair still damp. They looked so small and sweet and innocent that my heart ached with love for them. I settled onto the bed between them, the old book in my lap, and they snuggled close, one on each side. The book smelled like old paper and dust and something indefinably Mom, and I ran my hand over the cover before opening it. The story was a simple one, about a family preparing for Christmas, about love and togetherness and the magic of the season. I had heard it 100 times, had read it dozens more, but tonight the words felt different. Tonight they felt like a message, like something Mom was trying to tell me from wherever she was. I read slowly, my voice steady, and the children listened with rapt attention. When I got to the end, to the part where the family gathers around the tree and realizes that the best gift is being together, my voice did crack, just a little. Emma reached up and patted my cheek. "It's okay to be sad, Mommy," she said. "Grandma would understand." I pulled them both close, breathing in the clean smell of their shampoo, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against mine. "You're right, baby." She would. After I tucked them in and kissed them good night, I went back downstairs to find David had built up the fire and was sitting on the couch, 2 mugs of hot chocolate on the coffee table in front of him. "I thought we could use this," he said, patting the seat next to him. I curled up beside him, taking one of the mugs and wrapping my hands around it. The chocolate was rich and sweet, with tiny marshmallows floating on top that were already beginning to melt. "You did good today," David said. "Really good." I know it wasn't easy. It wasn't, I admitted. But it was also better than I thought it would be. The kids helped. They made it feel less like we were trying to replace her and more like we were honoring her. "That's exactly what we're doing," David said. "And we'll keep doing it. Every year. We'll keep her memory alive through the traditions, through the stories, through the love we share." I leaned my head on his shoulder, watching the fire crackle and pop, feeling the warmth of it on my face. Outside, I could hear the wind picking up, and I knew more snow was coming. "Do you think she knows?" I asked quietly. "Do you think she can see us, see what we're doing?" David was quiet for a moment, and I could feel him thinking, choosing his words carefully. "I don't know," he said finally. "I'd like to think so. But even if she can't, even if there's nothing after this, we're still doing the right thing. We're keeping her alive in the ways that matter. In our hearts, in our actions, in the way we love each other and our children." I nodded against his shoulder, feeling the truth of his words settle into my bones. We sat there for a long time, drinking our hot chocolate, watching the fire, listening to the wind. And slowly, gradually, I felt something shift inside me. The grief was still there, would probably always be there in some form, but it felt less overwhelming now, less like it was drowning me. I thought about the day, about the tree and the cookies and the stories and the laughter. I thought about Emma's star cookie on the mantel and Jack's sticky hands and David's patient presence. I thought about Mom, about her love of Christmas, about the way she had poured herself into every tradition, every decoration, every moment. And I realized that this was what she would have wanted. Not for us to stop celebrating, not for us to let grief steal our joy, but for us to keep going, to keep loving, to keep making memories even in her absence. The fire had burned down to embers by the time we finally went to bed, and I fell asleep quickly, more peacefully than I had in months. I woke in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps on the stairs. For a moment, I was disoriented, unsure of what had woken me, and then I heard Emma's voice, soft and excited. "Mommy, Daddy, wake up. It's Christmas." I looked at the clock on the nightstand. It was just past 6 in the morning, the sky outside still dark, and I groaned softly. David stirred beside me. "Is it morning already?" He mumbled. "It's Christmas," Emma repeated, now standing in our doorway, Jack beside her rubbing his eyes sleepily. There was no going back to sleep now, not with Emma's excitement practically vibrating through the room. David and I exchanged the look, and then he smiled. "All right," he said, sitting up. "Let's go see what Santa brought." The children raced down the stairs, their feet thundering on the wood, and David and I followed more slowly, holding hands in the darkness. I flipped on the lights as we reached the living room, and the tree blazed to life, its lights reflecting off the ornaments and creating a warm, magical glow. Under the tree were presents, wrapped in colorful paper, and the stockings we had hung on the mantel were bulging with small gifts and candy. The children fell on them with shrieks of delight, and David and I settled onto the couch to watch, our hands still linked. The next hour was a blur of wrapping paper and ribbons and excited exclamations. Emma got the art set she had been asking for, and Jack got a new set of building blocks that he immediately dumped out onto the floor. There were books and puzzles and clothes and toys, each gift received with genuine joy and gratitude. I watched them, my heart full to bursting, and felt David squeeze my hand. "This is good," he said quietly. "This is really good." I nodded, not trusting my voice. When all the presents had been opened and the living room looked like a tornado of wrapping paper had hit it, Emma suddenly jumped up and ran to the mantel. "We forgot Grandma's cookie," she said, picking up the plate with the star cookie on it. "We have to eat it for her." She brought it over to where we were sitting, holding it carefully, and I felt tears prick at my eyes again. "You're right," I said. "We should share it. All of us together." David broke the cookie into 4 pieces, and we each took one. It was sweet and buttery and perfect, and as I chewed, I could almost hear Mom's voice, could almost feel her presence in the room with us. "Merry Christmas, Grandma," Emma said softly, looking up at the ceiling as if she could see through it to wherever Mom was now. "Merry Christmas, Mom," I echoed, my voice barely a whisper. We spent the rest of the morning in our pajamas, playing with new toys and eating cinnamon rolls that David had bought the day before and heated up in the oven. The house was warm and filled with laughter and the smell of pine and cinnamon and coffee. Around noon, David started preparing Christmas dinner. We had decided to keep it simple this year, just the 4 of us, rather than the big family gathering we usually had. It felt right, this quiet celebration, this intimate togetherness. I helped him in the kitchen, peeling potatoes and chopping vegetables while the turkey roasted in the oven, filling the house with its rich, savory smell. The children played in the living room, their voices a constant background hum of happiness. As I worked, I found myself thinking about all the Christmases that had come before, all the years of tradition and celebration and love. I thought about Mom in this kitchen, her hands moving with practiced ease, her voice humming along to carols on the radio. I thought about the way she had made everything seem magical, the way she had poured love into every dish, every decoration, every moment. And I realized that I could do that too. Maybe not in exactly the same way, maybe not with her particular brand of magic, but in my own way. I could create traditions for my children, could fill their Christmases with love and joy and meaning. I could honor Mom by living fully, by celebrating completely, by refusing to let grief steal the beauty from life. The revelation felt like a weight lifting off my chest, like I could suddenly breathe more deeply than I had in months. David must have noticed something in my face because he stopped what he was doing and looked at me. "What is it?" he asked. I shook my head, smiling through the tears that were, once again, streaming down my face. "I'm okay," I said. "I'm actually okay. For the first time since she died, I really feel okay." He pulled me into a hug, and I let myself sink into it, let myself feel the strength of his arms around me, the steady beat of his heart against my ear. "She'd be proud of you," he said into my hair. "So proud." "I hope so," I whispered back. Dinner was ready by mid-afternoon, and we gathered around the table, the 4 of us, the food spread out before us in a feast that was both simple and abundant. The turkey was golden and perfect, the potatoes creamy and rich, the vegetables roasted until they were caramelized and sweet. There were rolls and gravy and cranberry sauce, and for dessert, there was the pumpkin pie I had made the day before, topped with fresh whipped cream. Before we ate, David reached out and took my hand, and I took Emma's, and she took Jack's, and Jack took David's, completing the circle. "I'd like to say grace," David said, and we all bowed our heads. "Dear God," he began, his voice strong and clear. Thank you for this food, for this day, for this family. Thank you for the love that binds us together, for the memories we carry, for the hope we hold. We're grateful for all the Christmases that have come before, and for all the ones yet to come. And we're especially grateful for the woman who taught us how to celebrate, how to love, how to find joy even in difficult times. We miss her, but we know she's with us in spirit. Amen. Amen, we echoed, and I had to wipe my eyes before I could look up. The meal was delicious, every bite a reminder of why we do this, why we gather, why we celebrate. We ate slowly, savoring each dish, talking and laughing and simply being together. Emma told elaborate stories about what Santa's workshop must look like, and Jack demonstrated how reindeer fly by running around the dining room with his arms spread wide. After dinner, we moved to the living room, our bellies full and our hearts fuller. David built up the fire again, and we settled in to watch a Christmas movie, the children snuggled between us on the couch, a blanket pulled over all of us. But halfway through the movie, Emma turned to me with a serious expression on her face. "Mommy," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetie. Anything." "Do you think Grandma had a good Christmas?" she asked. "In heaven, I mean." The question caught me off guard, and I had to think for a moment about how to answer. I looked at David, and he gave me an encouraging nod. I think," I said slowly, "that Grandma is having the most wonderful Christmas imaginable. I think she's surrounded by love and light and joy. And I think she's watching us right now, seeing how we're celebrating, and feeling so happy that we're together and that we're keeping her traditions alive." Emma considered this, her small face thoughtful. "I think so too," she said finally. "And I think she liked her cookie." I laughed, pulling her close. "I think she loved her cookie." Jack, who had been listening quietly, suddenly piped up. "Can we make cookies for Grandma every Christmas?" he asked. "So she always gets one?" My throat tightened with emotion. "Yes, baby. We can absolutely do that. Every single Christmas." He nodded, satisfied, and turned his attention back to the movie. I looked over at David, and he was smiling at me, his eyes warm and full of love. We had made it through. We had survived our first Christmas without Mom, and not only survived it, but found moments of genuine joy and peace and connection. It wasn't the same as it had been. It would never be the same. But it was still good. It was still meaningful. It was still Christmas. As the movie played and the fire crackled and the children's breathing grew slow and steady with approaching sleep, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. Gratitude for David, for his patience and strength and unwavering support. Gratitude for Emma and Jack, for their resilience and their ability to find joy even in the midst of loss. Gratitude for Mom, for all the years she had given me, for all the love she had poured into our family, for all the traditions she had created that would live on long after she was gone. And gratitude for this moment, right here, right now. This imperfect, beautiful, bittersweet moment of being together, of being a family, of choosing to celebrate even when it was hard. The movie ended, and David carried Jack up to bed while I walked Emma up, her hand small and warm in mine. I tucked her in, pulling the covers up to her chin and smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "Mommy," she said sleepily. "This was a good Christmas." "It was, sweetie. It really was." "Even without Grandma?" I thought about how to answer, about what truth I wanted to give her. Even without Grandma being here in person, I said carefully. But she was here in other ways. In the ornaments, in the cookies, in the stories, in our hearts. She'll always be with us in those ways. Emma smiled, her eyes already closing. I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby. So much. I stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her drift off to sleep, her face peaceful and content. Then I went to Jack's room, where David was just finishing tucking him in. We stood together in the hallway, the house quiet around us, and David pulled me close. We did it, he said softly. We made it through. We did, I agreed. And it was hard, but it was also beautiful. That's life, isn't it? He said. Hard and beautiful all at once. I nodded against his chest, feeling the truth of his words settle into me. We went back downstairs, and I found myself drawn to the mantel, to the picture of Mom that sat there next to the empty plate that had held Emma's cookie. I picked up the picture, holding it carefully, looking at her smile, at the joy in her eyes. Thank you, I whispered. For everything. For teaching me how to love, how to celebrate, how to find joy even in the hard times. I'll keep your traditions alive, Mom. I promise. And I'll teach Emma and Jack the way you taught me. You'll live on through us, through the stories we tell and the cookies we bake and the love we share. I set the picture back down gently and turned to find David watching me, his expression soft and understanding. Ready for bed? He asked. I nodded, and we turned off the lights, leaving only the glow of the tree to illuminate the room. As we climbed the stairs, I looked back one more time at the tree, at the ornaments catching the light, at the angel on top seeming to watch over everything. And I could have sworn I felt something, a warmth, a presence, a sense of peace that wrapped around me like a hug. Maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe it was something more. Either way, it felt like a blessing, like a message that everything was going to be okay. In bed, I curled up against David, his arm around me, and closed my eyes. The house was quiet, the children were asleep, and outside the snow had started falling again, soft and gentle. Merry Christmas, I whispered into the darkness. And somewhere, somehow, I felt like Mom was whispering it back. The days after Christmas passed in a blur of lazy mornings and leftover turkey sandwiches and children playing with new toys. The tree stayed up, its lights glowing every evening, a constant reminder of the holiday we had just celebrated. On New Year's Eve, we had a quiet celebration, just the four of us again. We made popcorn and watched movies and let the children stay up until midnight, their excitement at being allowed to break bedtime rules making them giddy and silly. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, David opened a bottle of sparkling cider, and we poured it into fancy glasses, even giving small amounts to Emma and Jack. When the countdown began, we all stood together in the living room, glasses raised, the tree lights twinkling behind us. 10, 9, 8, we counted together, the children's voices high and excited. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year, we shouted, and clinked our glasses together, the sound bright and clear in the quiet house. I took a sip of the cider, the bubbles tickling my nose, and looked at my family. David, strong and steady, his arm around my waist. Emma, growing so fast, her face alight with joy. Jack, still so small, his eyes wide with wonder at being up so late. This was my family. This was my life. And it was good. The grief was still there, would probably always be there in some form. but it no longer felt like it was consuming me. It had become part of me, woven into the fabric of who I was, but it no longer defined me. I had learned, over the course of this Christmas season, that it was possible to grieve and to celebrate at the same time. That honoring someone's memory didn't mean being sad all the time, but rather living fully, loving deeply, and finding joy wherever it could be found. Mom had taught me that. Through her life, through her love of Christmas, through the traditions she had created and passed down. She had taught me that life was meant to be celebrated, that love was meant to be shared, that joy was meant to be embraced even in the midst of sorrow. And I would carry that lesson forward, would teach it to my children, would live it every day. As we put the children to bed, their protests weak and their eyes already drooping, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The new year stretched out ahead, full of possibility and promise and unknown challenges. But I felt ready to face it. In our bedroom, as David and I got ready for bed, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "I'm proud of you," he said, "for how you handled this Christmas. I know it wasn't easy." "It wasn't," I agreed. "But it was worth it. And I think, in a strange way, it helped. Going through all the traditions, telling the stories, making the cookies. It felt like a way of saying goodbye, but also a way of holding on." "That's exactly what it was," David said. "And we'll do it again next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. We'll keep her memory alive." I nodded, feeling tears prick at my eyes again, but they were different tears now. Not tears of overwhelming grief, but tears of gratitude and love and acceptance. We climbed into bed, and I settled into David's arms, my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Thank you," I said softly. "For everything. For being patient with me, for pushing me when I needed it, for holding me when I fell apart. I couldn't have done this without you." "You don't have to thank me," he said, his voice rumbling in his chest. "That's what marriage is. Being there for each other, especially in the hard times." I smiled against his chest. "I love you. I love you too." I closed my eyes, feeling sleep beginning to pull at me, and my last thought before I drifted off was of Mom, of her smile, of her love, of the legacy she had left behind. She was gone, but she wasn't forgotten. She lived on in the ornaments on our tree, in the recipes in her box, in the stories we told, in the traditions we kept. She lived on in the way I loved my children, in the way I celebrated life, in the way I chose joy even when it was hard. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift she could have given me. Not just the memories of Christmases past, but the tools to create beautiful Christmases in the future. Not just her presence, but her wisdom. Not just her love, but the ability to love others the way she had loved me. The winter continued, cold and long, but somehow it felt less bleak than it had before Christmas. The tree came down in early January, and as we carefully packed away each ornament, wrapping them in tissue paper and placing them back in their boxes, it felt less like an ending and more like a promise. A promise that we would do this again next year, that the traditions would continue, that the love would endure. Emma helped me pack away the ornaments, handling each one with care, asking about the stories behind the one she didn't remember. I told her everything I could remember, every detail, every memory, wanting her to know the history, to understand the significance. When we came to the ornament with the picture of me and Mom, the one Jack had wanted to put on the tree, Emma held it for a long moment, studying the image. "You look happy," she said. "Both of you." "We were," I said. "We were very happy." I'm glad we have this, Emma said. So we can remember. Me too, sweetie. Me too. The last thing to come down was the angel, and I let Emma help me lift it off the top of the tree. We wrapped it carefully in bubble wrap and placed it in its special box, and then the tree was bare, just a simple pine tree again, ready to be taken outside and recycled. David hauled it out to the curb, leaving a trail of needles in his wake, and the living room suddenly looked empty without it. But it didn't feel sad. It felt right. The season was over, and it was time to move forward. Life settled back into its normal rhythms. School started again for Emma, and our days filled with the usual routines of breakfast and carpool and work and dinner and bedtime. But something had shifted. I felt lighter somehow, less burdened by the weight of grief. I still missed Mom. I still had moments where the loss hit me like a physical blow, where I reached for the phone to call her before remembering she wouldn't answer. But those moments were becoming less frequent, less overwhelming. And in between them, there were moments of joy. Watching Emma master a new skill at school. Hearing Jack's belly laugh when David tickled him. Quiet evenings with David after the children were in bed. Small, ordinary moments that made up a life. One evening in late January, I was going through some boxes in the attic, looking for Emma's baby clothes to pass on to a friend who was expecting. I found them easily enough, but as I was about to leave, I noticed another box, one I didn't recognize. It was plain cardboard, unmarked, and when I opened it, I found it was full of letters. Letters in Mom's handwriting, dozens of them, all addressed to me. My hand shook as I picked up the first one. The envelope was sealed, and on the front, in Mom's neat script, it said, "To be opened on your first birthday without me." I sat down hard on the attic floor, the box in my lap, and stared at the envelope. There were others, I realized, looking through the box. One for Emma's next birthday. One for Jack's. One for my next anniversary. One for next Christmas. Mom had written letters. Before she died, knowing she was dying, she had written letters for all the occasions she would miss. Tears streamed down my face, but I was smiling too, overwhelmed by this final gift, this evidence of her love that reached beyond death. I heard footsteps on the attic stairs, and then David's head appeared. "Hey, I was wondering where you..." He stopped when he saw my face, saw the box in my lap. "What is it?" "Letters," I managed to say. "From Mom. For birthdays and holidays and..." She wrote letters. David climbed the rest of the way into the attic and sat down beside me, looking at the box with wonder. "That's incredible," he said softly. I picked up the envelope marked for Christmas, the one we had just passed. My birthday wasn't until June, and I needed to hear from her now. "I'm going to open this one," I said. "The Christmas one." David nodded, his arm coming around my shoulders. I slid my finger under the flap and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was several pages of paper, covered front and back in Mom's handwriting. I unfolded them with trembling hands and began to read. "My dearest daughter," the letter began, and I could hear her voice in my head, could imagine her sitting at her kitchen table, pen in hand, writing these words. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you've just celebrated your first Christmas without me. I can only imagine how hard it must have been. Christmas was always our special time, wasn't it? All those traditions we built together over the years. I want you to know that I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of the woman you've become, the mother you are, the wife you are. I'm proud of your strength, your kindness, your capacity for love. And I want you to know that it's okay to celebrate, even without me there. In fact, I insist on it. Don't let my absence steal your joy. Don't let grief keep you from creating beautiful memories with your family. Christmas isn't about me, sweetheart. It never was. It's about love, about family, about finding light in the darkness. It's about passing on traditions and creating new ones. It's about the magic we make for our children and the love we share with each other. I hope you put up a tree. I hope you made cookies. I hope you told stories and sang carols and let yourself feel the joy of the season. Because that's what I would want. That's what I've always wanted for you. Joy. Love. A life fully lived. I won't be there to help you decorate or to taste test the cookies or to drive around looking at lights. But I'll be there in other ways. In the ornaments we collected together. In the recipes I taught you. In the traditions we built. In the love I poured into you from the moment you were born. You carry me with you, always. In your heart, in your memories, in the way you love your own children. I'm not truly gone as long as you remember me, as long as you keep the traditions alive, as long as you choose joy. So celebrate, my darling girl. Celebrate with your whole heart. Make Christmas magical for Emma and Jack. Create new traditions alongside the old ones. Fill your home with love and laughter and light. And know that wherever I am, I'm celebrating too. I'm watching over you, cheering you on, loving you with everything I have. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Today and always. All my love, Mom. By the time I finished reading, I was sobbing, great heaving sobs that shook my whole body. David held me tight, and I could feel that he was crying too. She knew, I managed to say between sobs. She knew exactly what I would need to hear. Of course she did, David said, his voice thick with emotion. She was your mother. She knew you better than anyone. We sat there for a long time, holding each other in the dusty attic, the box of letters between us. Eventually, my tears slowed, and I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I'm going to save the others, I said. Open them when they're meant to be opened. But I'm so grateful we found these. It's like getting one more gift from her. It's an incredible gift, David agreed. And so like her, to think of this, to make sure you knew she was still with you. I carefully folded the letter and put it back in its envelope, then placed it back in the box with the others. I would keep this box somewhere safe, somewhere I could access it when I needed it. These letters were precious, a lifeline to the woman I had lost, a reminder that love truly does transcend death. We carried the box downstairs, and I placed it in my closet, on the top shelf where it would be safe. Then we went to check on the children, both of them sleeping peacefully in their beds, unaware of the treasure we had just discovered. That night, lying in bed, I thought about Mom's letter, about her words of encouragement and love. She had been right about everything. Celebrating Christmas, keeping the traditions, choosing joy, it had all helped. It had all been exactly what I needed. And knowing that she had anticipated that she had taken the time to write it all down, to give me permission to move forward, to live fully, it was a gift beyond measure. I'm okay, I whispered into the darkness. I'm really okay. And for the first time since March, I truly meant it. The months passed, winter giving way to spring, and with it came a sense of renewal. The world came back to life, trees budding, flowers blooming, the air warming and filling with the scent of growing things. On what would have been Mom's 65th birthday in April, we went to the cemetery. It was the first time I had been back since the funeral, and I had been dreading it, afraid of how it would feel to see her name carved in stone. But when we got there, with Emma and Jack holding my hands and David carrying a bouquet of tulips, Mom's favorite flower, it wasn't as terrible as I had feared. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and the cemetery was peaceful, almost serene. We stood at her grave, and I placed the tulips in the vase built into the headstone. The children were quiet, sensing the solemnity of the moment. "Hi, Mom," I said softly. "We miss you. Every day. But we're doing okay. We had a good Christmas. We kept all your traditions. And we're going to keep doing it every year. You'll always be a part of our celebrations." Emma stepped forward and placed a drawing she had made on the grave, a picture of our family with an angel watching over us from above. "This is you, Grandma," she said, pointing to the angel. "Watching over us." Jack placed a small toy car next to the drawing. "For you to play with," he said seriously. I had to bite my lip to keep from crying, overwhelmed by the sweetness of my children, by their innocent understanding of death and love and memory. We stood there for a few more minutes, and then David suggested we take a walk around the cemetery. It was beautiful, with old trees and winding paths, and it felt good to move, to not just stand and stare at the grave. As we walked, Emma asked questions about death and heaven and what happens when we die. I answered as honestly as I could, admitting when I didn't know, sharing what I believed, letting her form her own understanding. It was a good visit, I realized as we drove home. Sad, but also healing. Another step forward in this journey of grief and acceptance. My birthday came in June, and true to my word, I opened the letter Mom had written for it. It was full of memories of my childhood birthdays, of funny stories and words of wisdom and expressions of love. Reading it made me laugh and cry in equal measure, and I was grateful beyond words for this gift, for these pieces of her that I could still hold on to. Summer passed in a blur of swimming pools and ice cream and long, lazy days. The children grew and changed, as children do, and life continued its forward march. And then, before I knew it, it was fall again. The leaves began to turn, the air grew crisp, and I could feel the approach of the holidays. This time, though, I wasn't filled with dread. I was actually looking forward to it. I had ideas for new traditions we could start, while still honoring the old ones. I wanted to volunteer at a soup kitchen on Christmas Eve, to teach the children about giving back. I wanted to start a tradition of each family member choosing one ornament to add to the tree each year. I wanted to make a photo album of all our Christmas memories to look through each December. I was excited, I realized. Excited for Christmas, excited for the future, excited for life. When December arrived, we threw ourselves into preparations with enthusiasm. We went back to the same tree farm, and this time I let the children each choose a small tree for their rooms in addition to the big family tree. We made cookies, dozens and dozens of them, and delivered plates to neighbors and friends. We drove around looking at lights, the children's faces pressed to the windows, their voices raised in off-key carols. And on Christmas Eve, we volunteered at the soup kitchen, serving meals to those who had nowhere else to go. The children were a little overwhelmed at first, but they quickly got into the spirit of it, Emma carefully ladling soup and Jack handing out rolls with serious concentration. Afterward, as we drove home through the snowy streets, Emma said, "That was good, Mommy. I think Grandma would have liked that." "I think so too, sweetie. I think she would have loved it." That night, after the children were in bed, David and I sat by the tree, just as we had the year before. But this time, the grief wasn't as sharp, the sadness wasn't as overwhelming. This was easier, I said. This year was easier. It was, David agreed. You've come a long way. We've come a long way, I corrected. We did this together. He smiled and pulled me close. Next year will be even easier. I nodded, believing him. The grief would never fully go away, I knew that now. But it would continue to soften, to become more manageable, to take up less space in my heart. And in the space it left behind, there would be room for joy, for love, for new memories and new traditions and new chapters of our story. Mom was gone, but her legacy lived on. In the ornaments on our tree, in the cookies we baked, in the stories we told, in the love we shared. She lived on in me, in the way I mothered my children, in the way I celebrated life, in the way I chose joy even when it was hard. And that, I had learned, was the greatest gift of all. Not the absence of grief, but the ability to carry it alongside joy. Not the forgetting of loss, but the remembering of love. Not the end of sadness, but the continuation of celebration. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, and the children woke us early, just as they had the year before. But this time, as we gathered around the tree, as we opened presents and ate cinnamon rolls and laughed together, I felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for this family, for this life, for this moment. Gratitude for all the Christmases that had come before and all the ones yet to come. Gratitude for Mom, for everything she had given me, for everything she had taught me, for the love that continued even after death. Emma made another star cookie for Grandma, and we placed it on the mantel next to her picture. And as we broke it into pieces and shared it, I felt Mom's presence so strongly it was almost like she was there in the room with us. "Merry Christmas, Mom," I whispered. "Thank you for everything." And in the glow of the tree lights, in the warmth of my family's love, in the peace that filled my heart, I could almost hear her whisper back, "Merry Christmas, my darling girl. I'm so proud of you." The day unfolded in a beautiful blur of food and family and laughter. We called David's parents and my dad, who had remarried and moved to Florida. We video chatted with cousins and friends. We played games and watched movies and ate too much and didn't care. It was perfect. Not perfect in the sense of being flawless, but perfect in the sense of being exactly what it needed to be. Real and messy and full of love. That evening, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, I found myself back at the mantel, looking at Mom's picture. I picked it up, holding it carefully, studying her face. I did it, I told her. I made it through. Not just survived, but actually lived. Actually found joy. Actually celebrated. Just like you wanted me to. I traced my finger over her face in the picture, over her smile, and felt a sense of peace settle over me. "I'm going to be okay," I said. "We're all going to be okay. You made sure of that. You gave me everything I needed. The traditions, the love, the strength. It's all still here. You're still here." I set the picture back down and turned to find David standing in the doorway, watching me with soft eyes. "Ready for bed?" he asked. I nodded and went to him, and he wrapped his arms around me. "I love you," I said into his chest. "I love you too," he replied. "And I'm so proud of you. Of how you've handled all of this. Of the mother you are, the wife you are, the person you are. I couldn't have done it without you, I said. Yes, you could have, he said. But I'm glad you didn't have to. We stood there for a moment, holding each other in the quiet house, and I felt a sense of completeness, of rightness, of being exactly where I was supposed to be. Life would go on. There would be more Christmases, more birthdays, more milestones. There would be more moments of grief, more times when I missed Mom so much it hurt. But there would also be more moments of joy, more times when I felt her presence, more opportunities to honor her memory and pass on her legacy. And I would face it all with the strength she had given me, with the love she had poured into me, with the knowledge that she was always with me, in my heart, in my memories, in the way I chose to live my life. As we climbed the stairs to bed, I looked back one more time at the tree, at the lights glowing softly in the darkness, at the ornaments catching and reflecting that light. And I smiled. Because this was what Mom had wanted. This was what she had worked for, what she had written letters for, what she had poured her life into. Not perfection, not the absence of pain, but the ability to find joy in the midst of sorrow, to celebrate in the face of loss, to love deeply and fully and without reservation. She had given me that gift. And I would spend the rest of my life honoring it, living it, passing it on to my children and, someday, to their children. The grief would always be there, a part of me now, woven into the fabric of who I was. But it no longer defined me. It was simply one thread in the tapestry of my life, alongside threads of joy and love and hope and gratitude. And together, all those threads created something beautiful. Something meaningful. Something worth celebrating. In bed, I curled up against David, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. Outside, snow was beginning to fall again, soft and silent, covering the world in white. I closed my eyes and let myself drift towards sleep, and my last thought was of Mom, of her smile, of her love, of the legacy she had left behind. Thank you, I thought. For everything. For the traditions, for the love, for the strength to carry on. For teaching me that it's possible to grieve and to celebrate at the same time, to miss someone terribly and still find joy, to carry loss and love together in the same heart. I'll keep your memory alive, Mom. I promise. And the cookies we bake and the stories we tell and the love we share. And the way I raise my children and the way I celebrate life and the way I choose joy even when it's hard. You're not gone. Not really. You live on in all of us, and everything we do, and every Christmas we celebrate. And that's the greatest gift of all. Sleep came easily that night, peaceful and deep, and I dreamed of Christmas mornings past, of Mom's laughter, of the smell of cookies baking and the glow of tree lights and the warmth of family gathered together. When I woke on the day after Christmas, the sun was streaming through the windows, bright and warm despite the cold outside. I could hear the children already up, their voices carrying from downstairs, and I could smell coffee brewing. I stretched, feeling rested and peaceful, and got out of bed. David was already downstairs. I could hear him talking to the kids, and I took a moment to just stand at the window, looking out at the snow-covered world. It was beautiful. Clean and bright and full of possibility. Just like the future that stretched out ahead of us. I got dressed and went downstairs to join my family, and as I walked into the kitchen and saw them all there, Emma at the table drawing, Jack building with his new blocks, David at the stove making pancakes, I felt my heart swell with love. This was my life. Imperfect and beautiful and full of love. And I was grateful for every moment of it. Good morning, Mommy, Emma said, looking up from her drawing. Look what I made. It's our family with Grandma's angel watching over us. I went over to look at her drawing, and sure enough, there we were, the four of us, with an angel hovering above, wings spread wide. It's beautiful, sweetie, I said, kissing the top of her head. Absolutely beautiful. Can we hang it on the fridge? She asked. Of course we can. I found a magnet and hung the drawing in a place of honor, right in the center of the refrigerator door where we would see it every day. David brought over a plate of pancakes, and we all sat down to eat together, the morning sun streaming through the windows, the house warm and full of the sounds of family. This is nice, David said, looking around at all of us. This is really nice. It is, I agreed. It really is. And it was. It was more than nice. It was everything. It was life in all its messy, beautiful, complicated glory. It was love and loss and joy and sorrow all mixed together. It was the past and the present and the future all existing in the same moment. It was exactly what Mom would have wanted for us. After breakfast, we spent the day in our pajamas, playing with new toys and eating leftovers and just being together. There was nowhere we needed to be, nothing we needed to do. We could just exist, just be a family, just enjoy each other's company. In the afternoon, I found myself in the living room, looking at the tree again. I never seemed to tire of it, of the way the lights glowed, of the way the ornaments caught and reflected that light, of the memories each one held. Emma came and stood beside me, slipping her small hand into mine. I like our tree, she said. It's not perfect, but it's ours. I smiled, remembering that she had said the same thing when we picked it out. Yes, I said. It's not perfect, but it's ours. And that makes it perfect in its own way. She nodded, satisfied with this logic, and we stood there together, mother and daughter, looking at the tree. Mommy, she said after a moment, do you think Grandma can see our tree? From heaven? I think she can, sweetie. I think she can see everything we do. And I think she's very happy with how we celebrated Christmas. Good, Emma said. Because I want her to know we didn't forget her. We remembered her in everything we did. My throat tightened with emotion. That's exactly right, baby. We remembered her in everything we did. And we always will. Emma squeezed my hand and then ran off to play with Jack, leaving me standing alone by the tree. But I didn't feel alone. I felt surrounded by love. The love of my family, the love of my mother, the love that connected us all across time and space and even death. That evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Jack came to me with a serious expression on his face. Mommy, he said, I have a question. What is it, baby? When I get big like you, will I remember Grandma? The question hit me hard because I knew the truth. He was so young when she died. His memories of her would fade, would become more about the stories we told than actual recollections. But I also knew that didn't mean she would be lost to him. I knelt down so I was at his eye level and took his hands in mine. You might not remember her the way Emma and I do, I said honestly. But you'll know her in other ways. You'll know her through the stories we tell, through the traditions we keep, through the love we share. She'll be a part of you, even if you don't remember her face or her voice. He thought about this, his small face serious. So she'll be in my heart? He asked. Yes, baby. She'll always be in your heart. And in mine. And in Emma's and Daddy's. She's a part of all of us. He nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer, and threw his arms around my neck in a tight hug. "I love you, Mommy," he said. "I love you too, baby. So much." I tucked him into bed and kissed his forehead, and as I left his room, I felt a sense of peace. My children would know their grandmother, maybe not in the way I had hoped, but in the ways that mattered. Through stories and traditions and love. Through the legacy she had left behind. And that would have to be enough. Because it was all we had. But it was also everything. It was love that transcended death, connection that survived loss, memory that kept the past alive in the present. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was beautiful. The days after Christmas passed quickly, and before I knew it, it was New Year's Eve again. We celebrated the same way we had the year before, with sparkling cider and movies and letting the children stay up late. But this year, as we counted down to midnight, as we clinked our glasses together and shouted Happy New Year, I felt different. Lighter. More hopeful. More ready to face whatever the new year would bring. The grief was still there, would always be there. But it had become manageable, bearable, something I could carry without it crushing me. And alongside it was joy. Real, genuine joy. The kind that comes from choosing to celebrate life even in the face of loss, from finding beauty even in the midst of sorrow, from loving deeply even when love brings pain. As we put the children to bed and cleaned up the remnants of our celebration, David pulled me close. "This year is going to be good," he said. "I can feel it." I nodded against his chest. "I think so too." And I meant it. I didn't know what the year would bring, what challenges we would face, what joys we would experience. But I knew we would face it together, as a family, with love and strength and the legacy of the woman who had taught us how to live fully. In bed that night, I thought about the past year, about everything we had been through, everything we had learned, everything we had survived. It had been the hardest year of my life. But it had also been a year of growth, of learning, of discovering strength I didn't know I had. I had learned that grief and joy could coexist. That you could miss someone terribly and still find reasons to smile. That love didn't end with death, but continued on in the hearts and lives of those left behind. I had learned that traditions mattered, that they were more than just rituals, but were ways of connecting past and present, of honoring those who came before, of creating continuity in a world that was constantly changing. I had learned that it was okay to be sad, but it was also okay to be happy. That I didn't have to choose between grieving and celebrating, but could do both, sometimes in the same moment. And I had learned that Mom's greatest gift to me wasn't the ornaments or the recipes or even the traditions themselves, but the ability to love deeply, to celebrate fully, to find joy even in the darkest times. That was her legacy. And I would carry it forward, would pass it on to my children, would live it every day for the rest of my life. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. Gratitude for Mom, for everything she had been and everything she had given me. Gratitude for David, for his unwavering support and love. Gratitude for Emma and Jack, for their resilience and their ability to find joy. Gratitude for this life, imperfect and beautiful and full of both sorrow and celebration. And gratitude for the journey, for the hard road I had walked, for the lessons I had learned, for the person I had become. I was not the same person I had been a year ago. Grief had changed me, had shaped me, had made me both softer and stronger. But I was still here. Still standing. Still loving. Still celebrating. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. The new year brought with it a sense of renewal and possibility. The days grew longer, the sun grew stronger, and slowly, gradually, winter began to loosen its grip. I continued to open Mom's letters on the occasions she had marked, and each one was a gift, a reminder of her love, a piece of wisdom or encouragement exactly when I needed it. On Emma's birthday in February, there was a letter for her, full of memories of when I was her age, of advice for growing up, of expressions of love from her grandmother who would never see her grow up but who loved her fiercely nonetheless. Emma listened as I read it to her, her eyes wide and serious, and when I finished, she said, "I wish I could write back to her." "You can," I said. "We can write letters to Grandma, telling her about our lives, about what we're doing, about how much we miss her. We can keep them in a special box, and someday, when you're older, you can read them and remember." Emma liked this idea, and that night, she carefully wrote her first letter to Grandma, her handwriting wobbly but determined. She told her about her birthday party, about the presents she got, about how much she missed her. I helped her fold it and put it in an envelope, and we placed it in a box I had designated for this purpose. A box of letters to heaven, Emma called it. Jack wanted to write one too, though at 4 he couldn't really write yet, so he drew a picture instead. A picture of our family with an angel watching over us, just like Emma had drawn before. We added his picture to the box, and I felt a sense of rightness about this new tradition. It was a way for the children to process their grief, to maintain a connection with their grandmother, to express feelings they might not have words for. And it was a way for me to see their relationship with her evolve, to understand how they thought about her, to help them keep her memory alive. Spring arrived in full force, bringing with it warm breezes and blooming flowers and the promise of new beginnings. We planted a garden in the backyard, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for. Emma and Jack helped me dig in the dirt, planting seeds for tomatoes and peppers and herbs. We planted flowers too, bright and colorful, and I made sure to include tulips, Mom's favorite. As we worked, I told them stories about Mom's garden, about how she had loved to grow things, about how she had always said that gardening was an act of faith, of believing that something beautiful would come from the work you put in. The children listened, their hands dirty and their faces serious, and I could see them absorbing the stories, making them part of their own understanding of who their grandmother had been. As the weeks passed and the plants began to grow, I found myself spending more and more time in the garden. There was something meditative about it, something healing in the act of nurturing life, of watching something grow from a tiny seed into a thriving plant. It became my sanctuary, my place to think and remember and process. I would go out there in the early morning, before the children woke, and sit among the growing plants, drinking my coffee and watching the sun rise. And I would talk to Mom. Not out loud, but in my head, telling her about my day, about the children, about the life we were building. Asking her for advice, for guidance, for strength. And somehow, in the quiet of the garden, surrounded by growing things, I felt her presence. Not in a spooky or supernatural way, but in a comforting one. Like she was there with me, listening, supporting, loving. By the time summer arrived, the garden was thriving. We had tomatoes and peppers and herbs, and the flowers were blooming in a riot of color. The tulips had come and gone, but I had cut them and brought them inside while they lasted, placing them in a vase on the mantel next to Mom's picture. The children loved the garden, loved being able to go outside and pick tomatoes right off the vine, loved the way the herbs smelled when you rubbed them between your fingers. It had become a part of our daily routine, checking on the plants, watering them, watching them grow. and it had become a living memorial to Mom, a way of honoring her love of growing things, of keeping her spirit alive in a tangible, beautiful way. One evening in July, as we were eating dinner on the back patio, surrounded by the garden, Emma said, "I think Grandma would like our garden." "I think she would love it," I agreed. She always said that gardens were proof that beauty could come from hard work and patience. Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Like how we're sad about Grandma being gone, but we can still have happy times." I felt tears prick at my eyes, amazed once again by my daughter's wisdom. "Yes, sweetie. Exactly like that." David reached over and squeezed my hand, and I squeezed back, grateful for this moment, for this family, for this life. The summer passed in a blur of swimming and picnics and long, lazy days. We took a vacation to the beach, something we did every year, and while there were moments when I missed Mom acutely, when I wished she was there to see the children play in the waves, there were also moments of pure joy. And I was learning to hold both of those feelings at once, to let them coexist without one canceling out the other. Fall arrived again, and with it came the familiar anticipation of the holidays. But this year, I wasn't dreading it. I was looking forward to it. We had survived our first Christmas without Mom. We had not only survived it, but had found ways to honor her, to keep her memory alive, to celebrate even in the midst of grief. And now, approaching our second Christmas without her, I felt ready. Ready to continue the traditions, ready to create new ones, ready to fill our home with love and joy and the spirit of the season. When December arrived, we threw ourselves into preparations with even more enthusiasm than the year before. We went back to the tree farm, and this time the children knew exactly what they were looking for. We made cookies, trying some of Mom's recipes we hadn't attempted the year before. We decorated the house, inside and out, with lights and garland and all the trimmings. And we added new traditions too. We started an Advent calendar, with small activities for each day leading up to Christmas. We began a tradition of each family member choosing a charity to donate to in Mom's name. We started making ornaments together, creating new memories to hang on the tree alongside the old ones. Christmas Eve arrived, and we went back to the soup kitchen to volunteer, just as we had the year before. This time, the children knew what to expect, and they threw themselves into it with enthusiasm, serving food and talking to the guests and spreading cheer. Afterward, as we drove home through the snowy streets, Emma said, "This is my favorite new tradition." "Mine too," I said. I think it's important to remember that Christmas isn't just about what we get, but about what we give. Grandma would have liked this, Emma said with certainty. She would have loved it, I agreed. That night, after the children were in bed, David and I sat by the tree, just as we had for the past 2 years. The lights glowed softly, the ornaments sparkled, and the house was filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon and all the smells of Christmas. "It's been 2 years," I said softly. 2 years since she's been gone." David nodded. "How are you feeling?" I thought about it, really considered the question. "Sad," I said finally. "I'll always be sad that she's not here. But also grateful. Grateful for the time we had, for the lessons she taught me, for the legacy she left behind. And grateful for this, for our family, for the life we're building." "That's beautiful," David said. "And I think that's exactly how she would want you to feel." I leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. "I think so too." Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, and once again the children woke us early, their excitement palpable. We gathered around the tree, opened presents, ate cinnamon rolls, and celebrated together. And once again, Emma made a star cookie for Grandma, and we placed it on the mantel and shared it together. But this year, it felt less like a sad ritual and more like a joyful one. A way of including Mom in our celebration, of acknowledging her presence in our lives even in her absence. The day unfolded beautifully, full of laughter and love and all the magic of Christmas. And as I looked around at my family, at the tree, at the decorations, at the evidence of our celebration, I felt a sense of peace and contentment that I hadn't felt in years. We had done it. We had not only survived loss, but had found a way to thrive in spite of it. We had honored Mom's memory while also creating new memories. We had held on to the past while also embracing the future. And we had discovered that joy and sorrow could coexist, that you could grieve and celebrate at the same time, that love truly did transcend death. That evening, after the children were in bed, I went to my closet and pulled out the box of letters. I found the one marked for the second Christmas and opened it carefully. My dearest daughter, it began, and once again I could hear Mom's voice in my head. If you're reading this, it means you've made it through 2 Christmases without me. I'm so proud of you. I know it hasn't been easy, but I hope it's gotten a little easier. I hope you're finding ways to celebrate, to create new traditions alongside the old ones, to fill your home with love and joy. I hope you're taking care of yourself, not just physically but emotionally. Grief is a journey, not a destination, and it's okay if you're still sad sometimes. It's okay if you still miss me. I miss you too, wherever I am. But I also hope you're finding moments of happiness, moments of peace, moments when the grief doesn't feel quite so heavy. I hope you're laughing with your children, loving your husband, living your life fully. Because that's what I want for you, sweetheart. Not a life free from pain, because that's impossible, but a life full of love and meaning and purpose. A life where you honor the past but don't live in it. A life where you embrace the present and look forward to the future. You're doing so well, my darling girl. Better than you probably think. You're raising beautiful children, you're building a beautiful life, and you're keeping my memory alive in the most important ways. I'm so grateful for you. For the daughter you were, for the woman you've become, for the mother you are. You make me proud every single day. Keep celebrating, sweetheart. Keep loving. Keep living. That's the greatest gift you can give me. Merry Christmas, my darling. Today and always. All my love, Mom. I folded the letter carefully and held it to my chest, tears streaming down my face. But they were good tears, healing tears, tears of gratitude and love and acceptance. Thank you, Mom, I whispered. For everything. For these letters, for your love, for your wisdom. For teaching me how to live, how to love, how to celebrate even in the face of loss. I'll keep going, I promise. I'll keep celebrating, keep loving, keep living. For you, for my family, for myself. I placed the letter back in the box and returned it to the shelf. Then I went downstairs to where David was waiting, and we sat together by the tree, holding hands, watching the lights twinkle. This is good, I said. This life we're building. It's really good. It is, David agreed. And it's going to keep getting better. I believed him. Not because the grief would go away, but because I had learned how to carry it. Not because life would be perfect, but because I had learned to find beauty in imperfection. Not because the pain would disappear, but because I had learned that joy could exist alongside it. Mom had taught me that. through her life, through her love, through her letters, through the legacy she had left behind. And I would carry that lesson forward, would live it every day, would pass it on to my children and, someday, to their children. Because that was what love did. It endured. It transcended. It continued on, generation after generation, a thread connecting past and present and future. And as long as we kept loving, kept celebrating, kept honoring those who came before us, they would never truly be gone. They would live on in us, in our hearts, in our actions, in the way we chose to live our lives. And that was the greatest gift of all. As the years passed, the grief continued to soften, to become more manageable, to take up less space in my daily life. There were still hard moments, still times when I missed Mom so acutely it took my breath away. But those moments became less frequent, less overwhelming. And in between them were countless moments of joy. Watching Emma grow into a confident, compassionate young woman. Watching Jack develop his own personality, his own interests, his own way of being in the world. Growing older with David, our love deepening and maturing with each passing year. We continued the traditions Mom had started, and we added new ones of our own. The garden became a permanent fixture, expanding each year. The Letters to Heaven box filled up with notes and drawings from the children. The star cookie for Grandma became a beloved ritual that we all looked forward to. And each year, on Christmas Eve, I would open the letter Mom had written for that year, and each year her words were exactly what I needed to hear. Emma grew old enough to understand the significance of the letters, and she would sit with me as I read them, her hand in mine, tears streaming down both our faces. "I wish I remembered her better," she said once, when she was 12. "I have some memories, but they're getting fuzzy." "That's okay," I told her. "You know her in other ways. Through the stories, through the traditions, through the love that she poured into our family. She's a part of you, even if you don't remember every detail." Emma nodded, seeming to accept this. "And I have the letters," she said. "When I'm older, when I have my own children, I can read them and know what kind of person she was." "Exactly," I said. "That's exactly right." Jack, as I had predicted, didn't really remember Mom at all. His knowledge of her came entirely from stories and pictures and the traditions we kept. But he loved her nonetheless, in his own way, and he honored her memory with the same dedication as the rest of us. When he was 8, he asked if he could plant a special section of the garden just for Grandma, with only her favorite flowers. We did it together, creating a small memorial garden within the larger one, and it became his special project, something he tended with care and pride. David and I grew older, our hair graying, our bodies slowing down. But our love remained strong, strengthened by everything we had been through together, by the grief we had navigated, by the life we had built. And through it all, Mom's presence remained. Not as a ghost or a haunting, but as a warm, comforting presence. In the ornaments on the tree, in the recipes we used, in the stories we told, in the love we shared. She was woven into the fabric of our lives, an essential thread that held everything together. And I realized, as the years went by, that this was what it meant to truly honor someone's memory. Not to be frozen in grief, not to stop living, but to carry them forward with you. To let their love and their lessons and their legacy shape who you became and how you lived. Mom had given me so much. Love, wisdom, strength, traditions, memories. But the greatest gift she had given me was the ability to keep going, to keep loving, to keep celebrating even in the face of loss. And I had taken that gift and built a life with it. A beautiful, meaningful, full life. a life she would have been proud of. One Christmas, when Emma was 16 and Jack was 14, we were decorating the tree together, just as we had done every year. The children were older now, less excited about the process than they had been when they were small, but still willing to participate, still understanding the importance of the tradition. As we hung ornaments, Emma picked up the one with the picture of me and Mom, the one Jack had wanted to put on the tree that first Christmas after Mom died. "Tell me about this day," she said. "Tell me about what it was like when you were little and Grandma took you to see Santa." And so I did. I told her about the mall, about the long line, about Mom's patience and excitement. I told her about how Mom had made every Christmas magical, how she had poured herself into every tradition, every decoration, every moment. Emma listened, her eyes bright with interest, and when I finished, she said, "I want to be like that. When I have kids someday, I want to make Christmas magical for them the way Grandma did for you and you do for us." My throat tightened with emotion. "You will, sweetie. You absolutely will. Because you've learned from the best." She smiled and carefully hung the ornament on the tree, in a place of honor where everyone could see it. Jack came over to see what we were looking at, and Emma told him the story I had just told her. He listened with the same interest, even though he had heard the story before, many times. "Grandma sounds like she was really cool," he said when Emma finished. "She was," I agreed. "She was the coolest." "I wish I could have known her," Jack said, a note of sadness in his voice. "You do know her," I said firmly. "Maybe not in the way you wish you could, but you know her. She's in every tradition we keep, every story we tell, every moment we celebrate. She's a part of you, Jack. She always will be." He nodded, seeming comforted by this, and went back to hanging ornaments. David came up beside me and put his arm around my waist. "You're doing a good job," he said quietly. "Keeping her memory alive for them." "We're doing a good job," I corrected. "We're doing it together." He smiled and kissed my temple, and we stood there together, watching our children decorate the tree, continuing the traditions that had been passed down to us and that we were now passing on to them. And I felt Mom's presence so strongly in that moment, felt her approval, her love, her pride. We had done it. We had kept her memory alive. We had honored her legacy. We had built a life full of love and meaning and celebration. And we would continue to do so, for as long as we lived. That Christmas Eve, after the children had gone to bed, I opened the letter Mom had written for that year. There were only a few left now, and I treasured each one, knowing that soon they would run out. "My dearest daughter," this one began, just like all the others. "If you're reading this, many years have passed since I've been gone. Your children are probably teenagers now, or close to it. Time moves so quickly, doesn't it? I hope you've had many beautiful Christmases since I left. I hope you've kept the traditions alive, but also created new ones. I hope you've found ways to honor my memory while also living fully in the present. By now, the grief has probably softened. It's probably no longer the sharp, overwhelming pain it was in the beginning, but something gentler, more manageable. A sweet sadness, perhaps, rather than a crushing sorrow. That's how it should be. That's how I would want it to be. I don't want you to spend your life grieving me, sweetheart. I want you to spend it living, loving, celebrating. I want you to fill your days with joy and your heart with love. I want you to create beautiful memories with your family, to watch your children grow, to grow old with David. I want you to live the fullest, most beautiful life possible. And I want you to know that I'm proud of you. So incredibly proud. Proud of the woman you are, the mother you are, the life you've built. Proud of how you've handled loss, how you've kept going, how you've chosen joy even when it was hard. You're amazing, my darling girl. Truly amazing. As you continue forward, remember that I'm always with you. In your heart, in your memories, in the traditions you keep. In the way you love your children and the way you celebrate life. I'm not gone, not really. I'm just in a different form now. A form that exists in love and memory and legacy. And that's enough. That's more than enough. Keep celebrating, sweetheart. Keep loving. Keep living. That's all I've ever wanted for you. Merry Christmas, my darling. Today and always. All my love, Mom. I folded the letter carefully, tears streaming down my face, and held it to my heart. Thank you, Mom, I whispered. For everything. For your love, for your wisdom, for these letters. For teaching me how to live, how to love, how to keep going even when it's hard. I've tried to make you proud. I hope I have. I sat there for a long time, holding the letter, feeling Mom's presence, feeling her love. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that she was proud. That she was watching over us, wherever she was. That she was happy with the life we had built, the traditions we had kept, the love we had shared. And that was enough. That was everything. David found me there, sitting by the tree, tears on my face but a smile on my lips. You okay? He asked, sitting down beside me. I'm perfect, I said. Absolutely perfect. And I meant it. Not perfect in the sense of having no problems, no pain, no sorrow. But perfect in the sense of being exactly where I was supposed to be, with exactly who I was supposed to be with, living exactly the life I was supposed to live. A life full of love and meaning and purpose. A life that honored the past while embracing the present and looking forward to the future. A life that celebrated joy even in the midst of sorrow. A life Mom would have been proud of. And that was the greatest gift I could give her. Not my grief, not my sadness, not my inability to move forward. But my joy, my love, my full and beautiful life. That was how I would honor her memory. By living well, by loving deeply, by celebrating fully. By choosing joy every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Because that was what she had taught me. That was her legacy. That was the gift she had given me. And I would carry it forward for the rest of my life and pass it on to my children, and they would pass it on to theirs. And in that way, Mom would live on. Forever. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and new challenges. Emma graduated high school, then went off to college. Jack followed a few years later. David and I became empty nesters, adjusting to the quiet house, to the absence of our children's daily presence. But we still celebrated Christmas with the same enthusiasm, the same dedication to tradition. And when the children came home for the holidays, we fell back into the familiar rhythms, decorating the tree, making cookies, telling stories. And always, always, we made the star cookie for Grandma and placed it on the mantel. Emma brought home a boyfriend one year, a nice young man who listened respectfully as we told stories about Mom, who helped decorate the tree, who seemed to understand the importance of the traditions we kept. He's a keeper, David whispered to me as we watched Emma and her boyfriend laughing together in the kitchen. I think so too, I agreed. The next year, Emma brought him home again, and on Christmas Eve, he asked for permission to propose. David and I gave it gladly, and on Christmas morning, in front of the tree, surrounded by family and tradition and love, he got down on one knee and asked Emma to marry him. She said yes, of course, tears streaming down her face, and we all celebrated together, the joy of the moment mixing with the bittersweet knowledge that Mom wasn't there to see it. But in another way, she was there. In the ornaments on the tree, in the traditions we kept, in the love that filled the room. She was always there. Emma got married the following summer, in a beautiful outdoor ceremony surrounded by flowers and love. She carried a bouquet of tulips, Mom's favorite, and we placed a framed picture of Mom in the front row, saving her a seat. During the reception, Emma gave a speech, thanking everyone for coming, thanking David and me for raising her, and thanking Mom for the legacy of love she had left behind. "My grandmother isn't here today," Emma said, her voice strong despite the tears in her eyes. "But she's with us in spirit. She taught my mother how to love, how to celebrate, how to find joy even in difficult times. And my mother taught me. And someday, I'll teach my children. That's how love works. It continues on, generation after generation, connecting us all." There wasn't a dry eye in the house, and I felt David's hand find mine, squeezing tight. "She's so much like you," he whispered. "And so much like your mom." I nodded, unable to speak, overwhelmed with pride and love and gratitude. A few years later, Emma called with news. She was pregnant. David and I were going to be grandparents. The joy I felt was indescribable, but it was mixed with sadness too. Sadness that Mom would never meet her great-grandchild, would never hold this new baby, would never pass on her wisdom and love directly. But I also knew that she would be there, in the stories we told, in the traditions we kept, in the love we shared. This baby would know their great-grandmother, maybe not in person, but in all the ways that mattered. Emma gave birth to a baby girl in the spring, and they named her Grace. Grace Eleanor, with Eleanor being Mom's middle name. When Emma told me the name, I cried. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears of love and connection and continuity. "Thank you," I said, holding my granddaughter for the first time, marveling at her tiny fingers and perfect face. "Thank you for honoring her this way. She was important to you," Emma said. "And even though I don't remember her as well as I wish I did, I know she was special. I want Grace to know about her, to understand where she comes from, to be connected to that legacy of love. She will, I promised. We'll make sure of it." And we did. As Grace grew, we told her stories about her great-grandmother. We showed her pictures, we shared memories, we kept the traditions alive. And when Grace was old enough, we let her help decorate the tree, just as Emma and Jack had done when they were small. We taught her how to make cookies, using Mom's recipes. We took her to the tree farm and let her help pick out the tree. We passed on the legacy, just as it had been passed to us. And on Christmas Eve, when Grace was 3 years old, she helped Emma make the star cookie for great-grandma Eleanor. She carefully spread the frosting and placed the sprinkles, her tongue sticking out in concentration, just as Emma's used to do. "This is for great-grandma," Emma explained. "We make it every year to remember her and to include her in our celebration." Grace nodded seriously. "Is she in heaven?" she asked. "Yes, sweetie. She's in heaven." "Can she see us?" "I believe she can," Emma said. "I believe she's watching over us, happy that we're together, happy that we're celebrating." Grace seemed satisfied with this answer, and when the cookie was done, she insisted on carrying it to the mantel herself, placing it carefully next to the picture of Mom. "Hi, Great-Grandma," she said, waving at the picture. "Merry Christmas." I watched from the doorway, tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed by the beauty of the moment. For generations, connected by love, by tradition, by the legacy of one remarkable woman. Mom would have loved this, I thought. She would have loved seeing her great-granddaughter, seeing the traditions continue, seeing the love carry on. And in that moment, I felt her presence so strongly it was almost like she was standing right beside me. "Well done," I could almost hear her say. "You've done so well, my darling girl." That night, after Grace was in bed and Emma and her husband had gone to their room, David and I sat by the tree, just as we had done for so many years. "Can you believe we're grandparents?" David said, shaking his head in wonder. "I can't," I admitted. "It feels like just yesterday we were bringing Emma home from the hospital. Where did the time go?" "It went into building this," David said, gesturing around at the house, at the tree, at the evidence of our life together. "Into raising our children, into keeping traditions alive, into creating a family full of love." He was right. The time had gone into something beautiful, something meaningful, something worth every moment. "I'm grateful," I said. "For all of it. For you, for our children, for Grace, for this life we've built. Even for the hard parts, the grief, the loss. Because it all led us here, to this moment, to this beautiful life." "Me too," David said. "Me too." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights on the tree twinkle, listening to the quiet of the house, feeling the peace of the moment. And I thought about that first Christmas after Mom died, about how impossible it had seemed, about how I had doubted my ability to celebrate, to find joy, to keep going. But I had done it. We had done it. Together. And not only had we survived, we had thrived. We had built a beautiful life, full of love and meaning and tradition. We had honored Mom's memory while also creating our own path forward. We had learned that grief and joy could coexist, that you could miss someone terribly and still find reasons to celebrate, that love truly did transcend death. And we had passed that lesson on to the next generation, ensuring that Mom's legacy would continue long after we were gone. That was the greatest gift we could give her. Not our sadness, not our inability to move forward, but our joy, our love, our full and beautiful lives. Lives she would have been proud of. Lives that honored her memory in the most important way possible. By living fully, loving deeply, and celebrating completely. Just as she had taught us. Just as she would have wanted. As I sat there by the tree, David's hand in mine, I felt a sense of completion, of rightness, of peace. The journey had been long and hard. There had been moments when I thought I couldn't go on, when the grief felt too heavy to carry, when the loss felt too great to bear. But I had kept going. We had kept going. One day at a time, one moment at a time, one Christmas at a time. And slowly, gradually, the grief had softened. Not disappeared, but transformed into something more manageable, something that could coexist with joy and love and celebration. And in the process, I had learned so much. About resilience, about love, about the power of tradition and memory and legacy. I had learned that it was possible to honor the past while living fully in the present. That you could carry loss and love together in the same heart. That grief was not something to be gotten over, but something to be integrated, to be woven into the fabric of who you are. And I had learned that the best way to honor someone's memory was not to be frozen in grief, but to live the kind of life they would have wanted for you. A life full of love and joy and meaning. That was Mom's legacy. Not the ornaments or the recipes or even the traditions themselves, but the ability to love deeply, to celebrate fully, to find joy even in the darkest times. And I had taken that legacy and built a life with it. A beautiful, meaningful, full life. A life I was proud of. A life Mom would have been proud of. And that was enough. That was everything. As the clock struck midnight, marking the beginning of a new day, a new year, a new chapter, I closed my eyes and sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. Thank you, Mom, I thought. For everything. For your love, for your wisdom, for your legacy. For teaching me how to live, how to love, how to celebrate even in the face of loss. I've tried to make you proud. I hope I have. And somewhere, somehow, I felt her answer. You have, my darling girl. You absolutely have.